Besides U of A, I think Oklahoma State and these other games might be the most important for the Sun Devils in 2024.
You are Locked On Sun Devils, your daily podcast on the Arizona State Sun Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Richie Bradshaw, and I will be your guide for everything Arizona State Sun Devils. A shout out to my everydayers who are here every day, and thanks for making us your first listen of the day. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications wherever you're getting your podcast, and stay in touch with the show by following me on Twitter at RichieBrads36 and the podcast at LO_Sun Devils. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. And today we are taking a look at the most important games for the Sun Devils in 2024 besides Arizona. Because, come on, you can't talk about a Sun Devils football schedule or any schedule for sports, baseball, hockey, basketball, whatever, without mentioning U of A. That is the most important game every year. Kenny Dillingham said so himself. There's the first 11 games of the season, and then there's the Territorial Cup. It's 2 seasons for Arizona State. There's a lot of fans, and, myself included, I do lump myself in here, that will say the season basically is a success or it's a failure depending on you winning the Territorial Cup. You can go 1-11. If your one win is against U of A, sounds good. Now, if you go 11-1 and your losses to U of A, obviously it's still a good season, but you're still going to look back and you're going to be upset about it. So that's that when it comes to the Territorial Cup. But there are other important games for the Sun Devils. I have 4 games here that I think are must-win games or just have a lot of meaning to the Sun Devils this upcoming season. There's other games as well that we'll talk about at the end of the podcast, but the best way to start is with week 1, and that's against Wyoming. Now, I know what you're thinking. Wyoming, why is Wyoming here? Well, again, it's your week 1 game. You need to come out every year and win the first game of the season. Arizona State hasn't done a lot right over the last several years, but the one thing they do get is a week 1 win. This year's no different. You need to start off the year with a win. And Wyoming, look, they're not a great team. They're not a bad team. They're a good opponent for you to start your year off. It's not quite as small as Southern Utah. It's not as big as another Power 5 team. It is a good way to start the year. And the way I look at this game is this is kind of a set the tone game for where you are at from last year. Last year you play Southern Utah, you win that game 24-21. Not great. For what it's worth, of course, there was a monsoon that rolled in, or not a monsoon, a haboob that rolled in, and you were out of playing time for 2.5 hours. I understand, but you should have won that game by more than 3 points, no matter what. You need to come out and you need to look significantly better than where you were last year. It can't be the same outcome. You need to win that game by a good, firm possession, hopefully 2 or more. Even if you only win that game 28-21, you need to show significant strides forward. Maybe you're leading that game 21-7 with 5 minutes left in the game. Cool. That works for me. You just need to show that you have significantly improved from last year. If you were playing Southern Utah again this year, that would be exactly the case. I would still have Southern Utah as one of the most important games for ASU because you would need to come out and you would need to beat them better than you did last year. it's also a matter of like, how does everything look? There's a lot of changes to the Sun Devils team, most notably at quarterback. You do not have Jaden Rashada. He transferred. He's gone. Sam Levitt, until further notice, is your starting quarterback. He is QB1. He is the future of the position. He needs to come out and he needs to look good. But it's not going to be easy. Number one receiver, Elijah Badger, transfer. He's gone. Incoming is Jordan Tyson, who's going to be healthy. Missed him last year. He is going to be expected to be the new number one receiver. There's going to be pressure on him to be able to step up for Sam Levitt, be that reliable, dynamic option that Elijah Badger was. You're going to be looking at a new tight end position with Jalen Conyers gone, Bryce Pierre is gone, Messiah Swinson is gone. You have options. There's Cameron Harpole, who I really like. They got the kid from Cincinnati, who, of course, his name's escaping me at the moment. There are bodies here. Marqueston Douglas, Jaden Fortier is coming in. There's guys who need to step up there. The running back room, thankfully, you still have Cameron Scadaboo, and you added Raleigh Brown. Offensive line should be better. Offensively, you need to look better. Even though it's a very different looking unit, this is also year 2 under Kenny Dillingham. You just got to look better than where you were last year. Defensively, I've said many times, the defense is really good. They got to, I don't even know that you need to look better than where you were last year, because there are changes coming to the defense. You lose Trey Brown, you lose Chris Edmonds, you lose BJ Green, you lose Roe Torrance, you lose Ed Woods. Look where you were last year. I'm happy with it. Hopefully by the end of the year, you're taking those steps forward. But as a whole, this team just needs to look better than where they were last year in week 1. Next game up, I think this also might catch some people off guard, is Texas State. And the reason why I have Texas State on here is even in week 3, even against a non-Power 5 team, someone that you should roll over, this feels like a trap game. It's June, and I look at this and I'm like, I don't know. That could be a sneaky game. I don't know much about Texas State. I don't know. I can't name any players on their team. I haven't done my research and my homework into that team yet. But here I am, June 22nd, looking at that game that won't kick off until September 12th, and I'm like, I don't feel good about that. That's a weird feeling to look at that game and go, I'm not sure how I feel. You wouldn't expect that from a game that early on. But I just feel like this is one of those games that ASU has historically struggled with. Playing down to your competition. You need to be able to handle them. You need to be able to beat them pretty soundly. 2 possessions, 3 possessions, whatever. The other reason why this is really, really important, why this is a big game, why I have it listed. You are going into conference play as soon as this game is over. You finish this game, next week, you take on Texas Tech. That is your first game in the Big 12, period. This is your first year in the Big 12 Conference. You're not in the Pac-12 anymore. Not only do you need to come out and win this game heading into Big 12 play, for a record standpoint, you need that confidence. You need to go into Big 12 play at least 2-1, hopefully 3-0. The other game you have in Mississippi State, we'll see. But you need to be able to go into conference play at least 2-1. You need to have some kind of confidence. Again, you need confidence going into this game. Beating Texas State, I understand it's not the marquee game that everyone's got circled on their calendar. The other thing is this is a road game. This is not in Tempe. This just fits the narrative perfectly of like, you can't overlook Texas State. Let's say you're 2-0 You beat Wyoming, you beat Mississippi State. You cannot immediately start looking ahead to Texas Tech. That cannot be a thing for you. Texas State could sneak up on you. You need to beat the teams you're supposed to beat. We say it every year. It's one of the tried and true, not formulas, sayings of college football, of any sport. Beat the teams you're supposed to beat. This is as close to a quote-unquote gimme win as the Sun Devils have this year. And I do put that in quotes because this is a team that's won 6 games the last 2 years. Nothing on the schedule is a gimme. But if there is a gimme, it's Texas State. You need to win that game. There's no excuses to not win that game. Unless Richie Bradshaw is under center, playing left tackle and catching passes, as well as playing defense, you need to beat that team. This is more than a talented enough Sun Devils team to be able to take on non-Power 5 teams and beat them good. You cannot come out flat, especially if you lose to Mississippi State or if you only win one of the games. I'm under the assumption you beat Wyoming here. If you lose to Mississippi State and then you lose to Texas State and you go into Big 12 play 1-2, that's tough. That is tough. I don't know how you get out of that. I feel like that game could define your season. Week 3 against Texas State could define the season for the Sun Devils in 2024. We're going to go ahead and go to my next 2 most important games on the schedule here in just a moment. This is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Game Time is the authorized market ticket place of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on Game Time actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. You can save up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets for sports, comedy, theater, and any other events near you with flash deals that allow you to save on exclusive in-app deals for select seats ahead of the game or event. You can try out the zone deals where you can save by choosing a section and letting Game Time choose the seats. Their all-in pricing toggling feature will show the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. You can get a panoramic view of your seat in the app before you buy, so you know what to expect when you get there. Their lowest price guarantee means that Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference if you find tickets in the same section and row for less. And of course, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Wherever you're getting those podcasts, hit like, subscribe, turn on notifications so you get an update whenever we post new content. I appreciate you guys, as always, for tuning in, making us your first listen of the day. And a shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. Back into our conversation, 2 more games that I feel are the most important for the Sun Devils in 2024. Let's start with what might be the biggest game of the year, even if you include Arizona. That's Utah. Here's the thing. I don't know if Utah is a winnable game. That is, pound for pound, one of the best teams in the conference. They may be the team to beat in the conference. That's as well coached a team as any. Kyle Whittingham is one of the 5 best coaches in college football. There's a lot of talent there. And if they're healthy, with Cameron Rising being the forefront there, if he is healthy, they're the team to beat. And they feel like a playoff lock. So beating them feels impossible. The good news is you get them in Tempe. That needs to be a game that sells out. That needs to be a game that sells out. You absolutely need to come out and play to the caliber that you know you can be. That also means that you need to show Utah that you can compete with the top dog. And here's the other thing from here is not only are they likely the team to beat in the Pac-12, not only are they one of the best teams in the conference, regardless of like being the team, not only are they one of the best teams in the country, more than likely. This is one of the three teams that are joining you from the Pac-12, the others being Arizona and Colorado. And besides Arizona, Utah is your next rival. So what's the best thing you can do in your first year in a brand new conference is establish a rivalry that is winnable for you. Utah has been good for X amount of years, like 15 years at this point. Arizona State has had their moments against Utah. It feels like a great game every time they play, with exceptions. Last year, we got the snot kicked out of us. Prior to that, it feels like more often than not, it is good, old-fashioned football between these two. You need to do it again this year. You can't have a repeat of last year and lose by 40 points. You need to be able to be competitive in this game. I'm not going to say this is a must-win necessarily, but you got to find a way to be competitive in this game. And depending on how the season goes, this will be your sixth game of the year. So third game of the Big 12 slate. Prior to that, you'll play Texas Tech and you'll play Kansas. Then you play Utah. If you start off, we'll say 1-1. Let's say you beat Texas Tech and you lose to Kansas. You can enter this game of like, hey, we're going to get over 500. This is our statement game. This is the game that we want the rest of the conference to look back and go, holy cow, ASU just beat Utah? That's what that could represent for you. If you're 0-2, I don't think you're winning this game. If you're 2-0, I mean, that tells me that you're going to be auditioning yourself as a serious contender in the conference this year. It's one of the most important games. It's also probably the most unwinnable. If we're being frank, if we're being honest. If you look at this 12-game schedule and you go most unwinnable to most winnable, Utah is probably the most unwinnable. The only other one would be visiting K-State, in my opinion. That is as tough a task as any, but nonetheless, it's one of the most important. You need to establish yourself as a contender, not just in your conference, but also with the rivalries that you're bringing into this. Utah is one of your biggest rivals from day one. It's Arizona, it's Utah, and, in my opinion, and the final most important game, Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State is the fourth most important game that I have on here for Arizona State. And there's a couple of reasonings that I have here. For one, like I said, this might be your third rivalry in the conference. Arizona, Utah, up for grabs. Some will say Colorado. Colorado's not great. They barely beat you last year. They are not a team that is consistently competing with you. Sure, they're quote-unquote in a similar spot to ASU as a rebuilding team. They are not your equal. I hope Colorado fans find this. You're not. Anyways, you're looking for your third rival. Oklahoma State could be that team. Oklahoma State, you're playing them for a third straight year, you're 0-2. You need to be able to win this game. This is a must-win game, in my opinion. And Oklahoma State should be one of the four best teams in the conference. They are one of the best sleeper teams in the country, in my opinion. This is just a good, well-built roster. You got to win this game. It's to potentially establish a new rivalry. If nothing else, this could be one of those games that's a benchmark for where do you stand in the Big 12? Are you in the top half or are you in the lower half? Oklahoma State should be one of the 4, no worse than 5 best teams in the Big 12. Of 14 teams, it is some order right now of Utah, Oklahoma State, Kansas, Kansas State, Arizona. Those are your 5 top teams. After that, kind of a toss-up. But then you have your lower teams, your Houstons, your Cincinnatis, Colorado. Are you closer to that top tier or are you a bottom dweller? You need to win this game to establish which tier you're going to be in. You beat Oklahoma State. To me, that says you're probably a 6-win team. You lose to Oklahoma State, you're absolutely a losing record. And you just establish yourself as one of the bottom feeders. It's really kind of black and white for me there. And I understand, like I said, Oklahoma State's one of the best teams in the Big 12, one of the sleeper teams in the country. This is still you got to win this. At least if you want to establish yourself year one. Maybe this is another Utah game and you just want to come out and be competitive and show like, hey, don't sleep on Arizona State. We're a well-run football team. That's fine too. If you have another losing record this year, but you show growth, that's fine. But if you are intent on contending this year and you want to say, hey, we were 3-9 last year, we could have been 6-6, we could have been 7-5, we're going to do it this year, then this is a must-win game. But as far as must-win games go, there's these 4, and there's a couple of others that I want to highlight. We're going to get into those in just one moment. This is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. One more time, wherever you get your podcast, hit like, subscribe, turn on notifications so you get an update whenever we post new content. I appreciate you guys for tuning in as always and making us your first listen of the day. And a shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. The 4 games that we mentioned, we're going to talk about why they're must wins, And then I got 3 honorable mentions, which could be must wins or they could be really important games. Let's start with the 4 games that I highlighted. Wyoming. Why is it a must win? It's simple. It's week 1. Week 1, you need to start the year off 1-0. There's not a lot that ASU has done right the last several years, but at least they start off the year in the win column. You got to do it again this year. This is a beatable team. You are a better team than you were last year. Is there change? Absolutely. Nonetheless, you are a better team than you were last year. You are more dialed in year 2 of Kenny Dillingham. You need to win this game. Must win. Texas State, why is it a must win? You need to enter Big 12 play with a winning record. You beat Wyoming, you beat Texas State. You are at least 2-1. You take it and run heading into Big 12 play. You go 3-0, got to feel good about the way the season could go for you. But you need to beat Wyoming. You need to beat Texas State. You cannot go into Big 12 conference play, your first year of Big 12 conference play, less than 2-1. Cannot do it. If you are worse than 2-1, I'm not going to say season's over, but you're looking at another lost year. It's another rebuilding year. And Arizona State should not be in another rebuilding year. When you look at how competitive they were last year, when you look at the talent they added this year, this needs to be a 6-6 football team at worst. You need to start the year 2-1. Utah, why is Utah a must-win game? Because it's the big dog. Utah is the big bad kid on the block. They're the big bully. Everybody is giving them their lunch money, and they should. Got to beat them. Is it realistic? No, not at all. Utah is Really, really good. But you still got to beat them. You got to go into Big 12. You got to knock off the top team, and everyone's going to look at you and they're going to go, who is this kid? Who is this program? Where did they come from? Got to do it. Oklahoma State, why is it a must-win game? Because you're trying to establish a rivalry. And you can't go 0-3. You can't start off trying to make a new rivalry and go 0-3 the first 3 times you play them. At that point, it's not a rivalry. Oklahoma State doesn't have to respect you. They don't have to respect you going into this year. So earn that respect. Go in there, beat them in their house, by the way. This is in Stillwater. You need to win this game. No ifs, ands, or buts. This is a game that is as must-win as any other game. 3 more games I want to talk about. Kansas, why is it a must-win game? Because it's another benchmark in the Big 12. Kansas, like I said, they're one of the 4 or 5 best teams in the Big 12 right now. It's some order of Kansas, Kansas State, Utah, Arizona, Oklahoma State. Kansas is right there. You need to be able to beat Kansas, and that's not going to be easy. Thankfully, you have them in Tempe. Don't have to go to Lawrence. But it's also a very early game in the year for you. This is your second game in the Big 12. Let's say you lose to Texas Tech to start off Big 12 play. You start off 0-1. You need to beat Kansas. You can't start 0-2, especially because then you play Utah and then you go 0-3. It's must win. And it's, again, like Oklahoma State, it's a benchmark. Are you in the top half of the Big 12 or are you in the bottom half? Are you a competitive team or are you a bottom dweller? Must win. Last must win game, or I had 2 more, sorry. Texas Tech is the next one. For one, it's your first game in the Big 12. You would love to start off 1-0. The other thing, you're looking to create some rivalries. Oklahoma State, potentially there, but you got to beat them. Texas Tech, you beat them. There might be some intrigue there. You've had some really good games against Texas Tech in the last several years. You had the Kalen Ballage 7-touchdown game. You need that. You need another great game like that. You need to win that game. Last one, BYU. This is to establish a firm rivalry and one that you control. Last time you played BYU, you should have beat them, but Tyler Algier went Superman on Merlin Robertson, and Jaron Hall had a great game for BYU at quarterback. Got to beat them. This is a rivalry that ASU has historically favored them. Do it again. BYU is not expected to be one of the good teams in the Big 12 this year. So it's another team that you just need to beat them. Beat the teams you're supposed to beat. BYU should be one of those teams. You should be able to take them down. You get them at home too. And it's the second to last game of the year. So you get them in Tempe, and it's the last game before you prepare to take on Arizona. Must win. The rest of the games, best of the rest. Cincinnati, they're one of the worst teams. You should beat them. UCF, probably a benchmark game. They're in that same area as Arizona State of like, are you going to be good or are you going to be whatever? K-State, I don't think that's a winnable game. It's in November. You're going to Manhattan. It's going to be freezing. You're not winning that game. You win that game, I'll be blown away. It'd be awesome. Mississippi State, you'd love to beat them. It's part of your non-conference, and it's an SEC team. It'd be cool. And then, of course, Arizona. Arizona's always a must-win. I don't care if Arizona's the number 1 team in the nation and Arizona State is winless. That is a must-win game every single year. Goes without saying. But those are my 4 most important games, why those are must-wins, and a few runner-ups as well. What games for you are must-wins? Let me know in the comments, or you can hit me up on Twitter at RichieBrads36, the podcast at LO_Sun Devils. Wherever you're getting your shows, though, hit like, subscribe, turn on notifications so you get an update whenever we post new content. I appreciate you guys for tuning in, as always, making us your first listen of the day. And a shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. Guys, you're the best, number one fans in the world. We will be back again tomorrow. We have a special interview with one of the Sun Devils football players. I'll see you then. I'm really excited to share it with you guys. Till then, you keep it locked right here on Locked On.